He is standing at the dealer service desk holding a repair estimate for $3,000 on a bike he bought 18 months ago. Meanwhile, a Kawasaki Concours 14 with 205,000 miles on the original engine is sitting in a stranger's garage, running like it just left the factory. That gap between what people pay and what these machines actually deliver is where this whole video lives. 10 touring bikes, documented mileage, real prices, no fantasy numbers. Let us get into it. Quietly outlasting everyone into the number 10 spot, the Honda Deauville NT700V. We are starting small on displacement but massive on longevity because this bike quietly became a courier company's favorite secret weapon across Europe. The NT700V, built from 2006 through 2013 globally, though it only made a brief appearance in North American showrooms between 2010 and 2011, is the bike dispatch riders rode all day, every day for years, and simply refused to complain about it. Under that slightly awkward, slightly forgettable bodywork sits a shaft-driven, liquid-cooled, 52-degree V-twin at 680 cubic centimeters. Not the biggest number on this list, but stick with us. European Deauville Courier fleets logged bikes hitting 218,000 miles, tracked through the European Deauville owner's UK index. That is not a rumor from a forum keyboard warrior. That is fleet data from companies whose entire business model depended on these bikes not breaking down. Used prices right now sit around $2,950 for a V-twin touring machine with documented courier-grade endurance. That is borderline theft. The one thing that tends to go first is the combined ABS linked brake system, specifically the secondary master cylinder sticking, and that repair runs about $240. Cheap insurance against the one-weak link in an otherwise bulletproof package. Worth mentioning, this bike also uses a maintenance-free enclosed shaft, final drive instead of an exposed chain, something that completely eliminates the lubrication and adjustment headaches other bikes on this list deal with. Owners routinely report going tens of thousands of miles without a single bit of drivetrain drama. It is a small detail that most reviewers completely skip over, and it is a huge part of why courier fleets trusted this bike with their livelihoods. Here is your buying check. Press the rear brake pedal and make sure it snaps back fully to its resting position instantly, with zero sluggish drag. If it hesitates even slightly, that secondary master cylinder is already whispering its complaints. And if you are inspecting one in person, have the seller point at the small hydraulic linkage pivot mounted near the rider's right foot peg. That tiny part is the entire story behind this bike's one documented weakness. Small displacement, giant mileage record. Picture it, you buy the bike. It looked clean, it sounded great. 3 weeks later, the bills start. A worn chain, tired forks, a service the seller never mentioned. That's thousands gone on a bike you already paid full price for. Our inspection checklist catches every one of those before you pay, walking the bike like a mechanic. Spend $49 now or lose thousands later. Scan the QR on the right or tap the link in the description. Don't let a hidden problem drain your wallet. But what if you want something with a punchy parallel twin engine, a maintenance-free belt drive, and a chassis so smooth you forget it is even there? Sneaking comfortably into the number 9 spot, the BMW F800 ST/F800 GT. BMW built the F800 series to be the sensible alternative to their bigger boxer twins, and riders who actually did their research quickly figured out that sensible does not mean boring. It just means underrated. The engine is a liquid-cooled parallel twin with an internal balancing rod, displacing 798 cubic centimeters, built from 2007 through 2019. European long-haul daily commuters logged these bikes to 141,000 miles, according to the BMW MOA registry. Not a lab test, not a marketing claim. Actual owners actually commuting, actual odometers actually climbing. Right now, these are trading for $3,250 used. For a BMW badge, that price feels almost like a typo, but it is real, because most buyers are too intimidated by the badge to even look. There is also a genuinely clever engineering detail baked into that balancer rod. Instead of a second counter-rotating balance shaft, BMW used a single rod connected to the crank, specifically to cancel out the primary shake that normally plagues parallel twins. The result is a motor that feels almost like an inline-4 at highway RPM, smooth enough that riders coming off boxer twins often cannot tell the difference after the first 50 miles. The known weak point is the rear wheel eccentric hub bearing, which can fail and costs about $650 to sort out. It is the single largest repair bill on this list so far, but spread across a bike that will run past 100,000 miles afterward, it barely moves the needle. Your physical check on this one. With the bike on its center stand, grab the top of the rear tire and push and pull it laterally. Feel for any shifting or play in that hub. If it wiggles, budget for the bearing. If it is rock solid, you have found a genuinely clean example. Point at that large hollow center hub axle on the single-sided rear swing arm, because that is where the entire mechanical drama of this bike lives, and pretty much nowhere else. Now, before we keep climbing this mileage ladder, do us a favor. If you are enjoying watching brand new dealership hype get absolutely demolished by used bikes nobody wants, hit that subscribe button right now, because we publish exactly this kind of teardown every single week, and you do not want to miss the next one. Wandering unnoticed into the number 8 spot, the Yamaha FZ1/FZ1 Phaser Generation 2. This is the odd one out on the list because it started life as an R1-derived street fighter, not a purpose-built tour, and Yamaha bolted a fairing and some manners onto it and quietly created one of the most underrated sport tours of the 2000s. Built from 2006 through 2015, it runs a liquid-cooled 5-valve inline-4 at 998 cubic centimeters, lifted almost directly from the R1 Superbike and detuned for real-world torque instead of track day drama. Owners on the FZ1 forum have documented examples hitting 162,000 miles, which for a Superbike-derived engine running at sane, sustainable RPM is basically the mechanical equivalent of an athlete who never gets injured because they never push past 80% effort. Used prices sit around $3,800, which for an R1 engine wearing a touring disguise is an absolute steal. The riding position deserves a mention too, because Yamaha actually raised the bars and softened the pegs compared to the R1 donor bike, which means you get genuine sport bike acceleration without needing a chiropractor on speed dial after a 200-mile day. Add the half fairing and a taller windscreen option, and this becomes a legitimate all-day mile muncher that just happens to have a Superbike hard hiding under the tank. The known failure point is the generator rotor. The magnets inside can detach and destroy the stator on their way out, and that repair runs about $480. Not cheap, but entirely predictable and entirely avoidable if you catch it early. Here is your buying check, and it actually requires a tool. Connect a multimeter to the battery and confirm the voltage reads above 13.8 volts while holding the throttle steady at 4,000 revolutions per minute. If it is lower than that, the charging system is already struggling, and that rotor failure might be closer than you think. Point at the round engine casing cover on the left side of the crankshaft, because that is exactly where this ticking time bomb, or non-ticking time bomb, if you catch it in time, is hiding. Superbike guts in a touring body is one flavor of clever engineering. Our next bike takes the opposite approach entirely and builds an inline triple specifically to solve the problem nobody else was even trying to fix. Aging gracefully, into the number 7 spot, the Triumph Trophy SE. Triumph's Trophy nameplate has a long history, but the modern Trophy 1215, built from 2013 through 2017, was Triumph's genuine, no-excuses attempt at taking on the German touring establishment head-on. The heart of it is a liquid-cooled, transverse inline triple at 1,215 cubic centimeters, an engine configuration that gives you a growl no inline-4 or flat twin can quite replicate. Long-distance riders on the Triumph Ret network have documented examples reaching 132,000 miles, and that is with the bike doing exactly what it was designed for, which is eating continents for breakfast. Used prices sit at $4,900, and for a fully loaded, electronically adjustable touring platform with a genuinely characterful engine, That is a serious bargain hiding in plain sight. This is also one of the only bikes on this entire list that's shipped standard with a tire pressure monitoring system and an electronically adjustable suspension setting for solo, loaded, or two-up riding, features you would expect on something costing twice as much. Triumph basically threw every convenience feature they had at this bike and then watched buyers ignore it in favor of German badges. Triumph also borrowed cornering adaptive LED technology for later production years, meaning the headlight actually pivots into turns instead of pointing uselessly at the ditch. It sounds like a gimmick until you are riding a mountain pass after dark and realize you can actually see where the road goes. Combine that with a self-canceling turn signal system that was genuinely rare on a touring bike from this era, and you start to understand why loyal Triumph owners get almost defensive when this bike gets overlooked in favor of BMW's equivalent, despite costing thousands less used. The known weak spot is the electronic windshield regulator motor mechanism, which can strip internally, and repairing it runs about $420. It is an electrical gremlin, not an engine problem, which is a distinction that matters enormously when you are shopping for something that needs to run for another decade. Your physical check is simple. Toggle the windscreen button continuously, up and down several times, and confirm the screen moves through its full range smoothly without jumping teeth or hesitating partway. If it stutters, that motor mechanism is already on its way out. Point at the internal lifting arms tucked behind the front fairing dashboard, since that is the exact mechanism responsible for whether this bike's one real flaw shows up or stays hidden forever. A British triple with German ambitions is a great story, but what happens when a Japanese manufacturer takes their most beloved naked bike engine and quietly upgrades it into one of the smoothest fuel-injected fours ever built for the street? Slipping effortlessly into the number 6 spot, the Suzuki Bandit 1250S/GSX 1250FA. If you paid attention to our earlier deep dive on carbureted Bandits, you already know the family reputation. The Bandit 1250, built from 2007 through 2011 in the US market, returning briefly as the fully faired GSX 1250FA in 2011, took that reputation and gave it fuel injection, ABS, and genuine sport touring manners. The engine is a liquid-cooled DOHC inline-4 at 1,255 cubic centimeters, an evolution of the same bulletproof architecture Suzuki has been quietly perfecting for decades. Commuter logs across the two-wheel Texan community board document examples hitting 185,000 miles. And that is from riders using these things as genuine daily transportation, not weekend garage queens being babied along. Used prices are sitting around $3,400, which for an inline-4 with nearly 200,000 documented miles under its belt is one of the strongest value propositions on this entire list. One detail that rarely gets mentioned is the crankshaft-mounted counterbalancer, which Suzuki tunes specifically to smooth out mid-range vibration without robbing the engine of that satisfying inline-4 pull once you cross 6,000 RPM. It is the kind of behind-the-scenes engineering choice nobody notices until you ride a lesser bike and suddenly feel every single vibration in your hands. The known failure point is the fuel pump's internal T-strainer filter, which clogs over time, and clearing or replacing it runs about $180. That is genuinely one of the cheapest fixes we have covered so far, and it is entirely preventable maintenance rather than a surprise catastrophe. Your buying check is a test ride, and it is refreshingly simple. Roll the throttle open past 5,000 RPM and confirm the bike pulls hard, cleanly without sputtering or losing power. If it hesitates or stumbles up top, that filter is clogging and quietly starving the engine. Point underneath the rear base plate of the steel fuel tank, because that is exactly where this bike's one Achilles heel sits, waiting for a routine cleaning that most owners never bother to do. Suzuki proved you can fuel inject a legend without ruining it. Now watch what happens when Honda decides to mount an entire V4 engine sideways, purely to make the drive shaft more efficient. Cruising confidently into the number 5 spot, the Honda CTX 1300. This is one of the more obscure bikes on the entire list, built for a criminally short window from 2014 through 2015, which means most riders have literally never heard of it, and that ignorance is entirely your gain. The engine is a liquid-cooled, longitudinally mounted 90-degree V4 at 1,261 cubic centimeters, essentially borrowing the mechanical philosophy from Honda's larger touring platforms and shrinking the whole package down into something more manageable. Touring owner registries on the CTX 1300 Riders Forum document examples reaching 125,000 miles. And remember, this bike has barely been on sale for over a decade, so that mileage accumulated fast on riders who genuinely used it the way it was intended. Used prices sit around $5,200, which for a V4 touring machine this rare and this capable feels almost aggressively underpriced. Because Honda gave this bike a low seat height around 29 inches, combined with cruiser-style ergonomics and that touring-derived V4, it splits the difference between a full dresser and a naked standard in a way almost nothing else on the market attempts. Riders transitioning from cruisers into genuine long-distance touring consistently mention this as the easiest bike on this entire list to adapt to. The known issue is the rear exhaust header heat shield, where welds can fracture over time, and fixing that runs about $140. That is essentially pocket change for what is otherwise a remarkably clean mechanical resume. Your buying check involves a gloved hand. Tap the lower rear exhaust pipe shielding and listen for loose metallic rattling. If you hear it, the heat shield welds have already started to go, and it is a simple, cheap fix rather than anything to walk away from. Point at the lower exhaust pipe cover just ahead of the right saddlebag, because that is precisely where this bike hides its one and only documented flaw. Before we go any further up the ladder, we need you to do something for us. If any of these engines have genuinely surprised you so far, drop a comment telling us which one you would actually go test ride this weekend, because we read every single comment and it genuinely shapes which bikes we dig into next. Climbing steadily into the number 4 spot, the Moto Guzzi Norge 1200. We are switching continents entirely for this one, because Italy has been quietly building under-stressed, long-legged touring twins for decades, while everyone was busy paying attention to Japan and Germany instead. The Norge 1200, built from 2007 through 2016, runs an air and oil-cooled, longitudinal 90-degree V-twin at 1,151 cubic centimeters, an engine layout that has been the backbone of Moto Guzzi's entire identity since long before most riders alive today were born. Maintenance logs on the Guzzi forum document examples reaching 144,000 miles, proof that this old-school Italian architecture is not just charming, it is genuinely durable. Used prices sit at $3,650, which for a shaft-driven Italian V-twin with a documented 6-figure mileage track record is a genuinely rare find in this price bracket. There is something almost poetic about how this engine is mounted, with the cylinders sticking out into the airstream on either side of the frame, exactly like the BMW Boxer we mentioned earlier on this list, except rotated 90 degrees. The dry clutch also gives it a distinctive rattle at idle that either charms you instantly or has you double-checking the oil level. And it is worth knowing beforehand so you do not mistake normal Guzzi character for an actual problem. The one recurring issue is an oil pressure sensor switch leak, and fixing it runs a laughably cheap $90. Out of every single failure point on this entire list, this is the cheapest one to solve, full stop. Your buying check requires nothing more than a flashlight. Look down between the cylinder V-valley and check whether engine oil is pooling around the sensor threads. If it is dry, you are looking at a healthy bike. If it is wet, you are looking at a $90 fix standing between you and one of the most characterful touring bikes on the entire used market. Point into the deep center valley of the crankcase beneath the alternator belt cover, because that is where this entire story lives. In one tiny, cheap, easily replaceable part. Italian character is one thing, but what if a manufacturer took their sportiest, most aggressive adventure platform and turned it into a genuine long-haul continent crusher without losing any of that attitude? Creeping surprisingly into the number 3 spot, the Honda VFR 1200X Crosstourer. This is where the mileage ladder starts getting genuinely absurd, because the Crosstourer, built from 2012 through 2019, was Honda's answer to the big adventure touring machines, built around one of the most respected V4 engines the company has ever produced. The engine is a liquid-cooled 76-degree V4 at 1,237 cubic centimeters, essentially the same fundamental architecture found in Honda's flagship sport tours, wrapped in taller suspension in a more upright riding position. And here is the number that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. Global touring couriers, documented through Reddit's motorcycle community archives, recorded an example hitting 310,000 miles. That is not a typo. 310,000 miles on a shaft-driven V4 used as actual working transportation. Used prices right now sit around $6,800. For an engine architecture that has proven itself capable of over 300,000 miles, that price is almost comically low. Honda also fitted this bike with an optional dual-clutch transmission, essentially a semi-automatic gearbox borrowed from their flagship VFR platform, meaning some used examples on the market never require a clutch lever at all. Combine that with the tall, adventure-style stance and a 19-inch front wheel, and you get a machine that shrugs off gravel roads, interstate slabs, and stop-and-go traffic with equal indifference. The known weakness is specific to early Generation 1 models, built between 2012 and 2013, where the early generation mechanical cam chain tensioner can fatigue and allow chain slap, a weak point Yamaha addressed with an improved tensioner design. Starting in the Generation 2 models from 2014 onward, that repair runs about $220. Cheap, well understood, and entirely predictable if you know to check for it. Your buying check is straightforward. Put the bike on its center stand, spin the rear wheel slowly by hand, and feel for any tight spots or heavy resistance in that shaft rotation. Smooth rotation means a healthy drive shaft. Any binding means budget for that repair. Point at the rubber boot where the single-sided swing arm meets the engine cases, because that is exactly where this bike's one real weakness lives, hidden in plain sight under a rubber cover most buyers never even glance at. 310,000 miles is a hard number to beat, but our next bike is proof that a smart key ignition and a variable valve timing engine can survive over 200,000 miles of iron butt abuse without missing a beat. Settling comfortably into the number 2 spot, the Kawasaki Concours 14. We already told you about this one at the top of the video, and now it is time to actually dig into why it earned that spot. Built from 2008 all the way through 2022, the Concours 14 had one of the longest continuous production runs of any bike on this entire list. And that longevity is not an accident. The engine is a liquid-cooled, transverse inline 4 with variable valve timing at 1,352 cubic centimeters, essentially a detuned hyperbike engine wearing hard luggage and a windshield. Active iron butt community logs on the Concours Owners Group forum verify examples reaching 205,000 miles, accumulated by riders who specifically compete to rack up insane mileage totals on long-distance endurance rides. If anyone is going to expose a weak engine, it is that community, and this engine simply did not break. Used prices sit around $4,500, which for a 150-plus horsepower touring machine with documented 200,000-mile durability is arguably the single best value on this entire list. Kawasaki also engineered a shaft-drive tetra-lever system into this bike specifically to eliminate the shaft jacking effect under hard acceleration, meaning it handles far closer to a sport bike than its 688-pound curb weight would ever suggest. Combine that chassis trickery with variable valve timing, tuned for both low RPM torque and high RPM power, and you get an engine that is simultaneously a commuter motor and a genuine hyperbike underneath the touring bodywork. The known issue is the 𝐏𝐬𝐹 smart key ignition switch sticking or failing outright, and fixing it runs about $310. It is purely an electronic annoyance, not a mechanical one, which is exactly the kind of flaw you want on a bike you are planning to keep for the next 15 years. Your buying check takes about 2 seconds. Press down on the ignition knob and check whether it rotates smoothly without binding or requiring multiple key fob proximity attempts to register. If it catches or hesitates, that switch is already failing. Point directly at the main ignition switch assembly on top of the triple tree, because that is the one part standing between this bike and total, uninterrupted reliability. And before our final bike, one more quick favor. If this list has genuinely changed how you think about buying used instead of new, tap that like button right now, because it is the single biggest signal that tells this platform to actually show these videos to more riders who need to see them before they overspend on something with a warranty and a firmware update schedule. Arriving finally into the #1 spot, the Yamaha Super Tenere 1200. And here it is, the bike that anchors the entire ladder at the top, and honestly, it might be the most underrated adventure tour Yamaha has ever built. The XT1200Z, produced from 2012 through 2021, was engineered specifically to survive punishment that would destroy lesser machines. The engine is a liquid-cooled inline twin with a 270-degree crank at 1,199 cubic centimeters, a configuration specifically chosen to mimic the power delivery character of a V-twin while keeping the compact packaging of a parallel twin. Long-distance adventure riders on the Yamaha Super Tenere forum have documented an example reaching 171,000 miles. And remember, this is a bike frequently ridden off pavement, loaded with luggage, across genuinely brutal terrain, not babied on smooth interstate for its entire life. Used prices sit at $5,400, and for a fully adventure-capable, shaft-driven touring platform with that kind of documented endurance, that is an extraordinary number. Yamaha also gave later model years an onboard electronic suspension system alongside switchable traction control, technology that was genuinely ahead of its time for an adventure tourer in this price range. Even more telling, the shaft final drive on this bike shares its basic layout with the FJR 1300, an engine family with its own long history of six-figure mileage. So the durability story here is not an isolated fluke. It is a company-wide pattern. The known weakness is specific to early Generation 1 models, where the hydraulic cam chain tensioner can fail, and that repair runs about $220. Cheap, well understood, and entirely predictable if you know to check for it. Your buying check is simple and requires nothing but your ears. Start the bike cold and listen closely for a harsh clattering noise coming from the right side of the engine that lasts more than 2 seconds. If you hear it, that tensioner is failing. If the engine settles into a clean, quiet idle immediately, you have found a genuinely healthy example. Point at the small, cylindrical tensioner housing on the back of the right side cylinder block, because that tiny component is the entire story behind this bike's one documented flaw. Now let us talk about the actual math, because this is where all 10 of these bikes come together. Add up every single used price on this list, from the Deauville all the way up to the Super Tenere, and you land at roughly $42,600. That buys you 10 complete touring motorcycles, spanning V-twins, V4s, inline triples, and inline fours, with a combined documented mileage history stretching into the millions. One brand new flagship touring bike, loaded with the latest electronics and the inevitable depreciation cliff. Waiting the moment you ride it off the lot costs roughly the same amount as just 2 or 3 of these. The math is not subtle, it is not close. It is simply what happens when a market gets scared of mileage numbers instead of getting excited by them. That man at the dealership staring at his repair bill is going to keep staring at repair bills for as long as he keeps buying new. Meanwhile, these 10 engines are going to keep climbing their odometers long after his extended warranty runs out. Go click on the next video on your screen right now, and do not forget to subscribe before you go.